Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. One shelf at a time, shelf number one. I'm going to do it as part of a watering session, and that's why the tripod's over there, because I'm going to be here and there, sort of, and I can hold plants up here. And the reason for the camera being that way round is when I hold the plants up here, the light's coming in that way. If I put the camera around the way I normally do here and stand over there, the light's behind me and it doesn't work as good. So that's what we're up to. I'm just getting ready here, sorting out my feed, which should be about 150. That wasn't a bad guess, was it? 155. Now you have to bear in mind 45 of that was the water before I put any feed in, and this is the water that comes out of the suck it out sand, the dehumidifier, varies from around 40, 50 right up to 100, and it does seem to vary, so I do need to check it. The other thing is it comes out flipping cold, so it has to be warmed up. Now what's also a little annoying, I can deal with it, but it's just a fiddle, it's a faff. It also comes out at quite high pH, it's almost 7, it comes out at about 6.8, 6.9, which when I add feed to it, it's not taking it down as low as I'd like to go. The idea with the K-Lite fertiliser is that you feed low, you feed frequent, and you feed at a pH of about 5.8, 5.9. And I'm just checking this because I haven't checked it for a bit. See, that's 6.6. It's a lot higher than I would like to be. But we are watering pots, some of which have older media in. And the first thing that's going to happen to that pH when it goes in the pot is it's going to drop. So I'm not too worried about that being higher when I'm doing pots. When I'm doing mounts, I prefer it to be closer to where I really want it. Right, so yeah, that's lukewarm, as they say. Right, so I'm just literally going to start there. That is the shelf where I would start my pot watering anyway, and I'm just going to pick up a pot as I go. There will be some maintenance on the plants as I go along, things like dead leaves, checking for bugs. This is just my normal sort of thing that I do. So we'll start off with that, which is a Masdevallia hybrid. We've got some dead leaves to take off, which is a little worrying because some of these are small leaves, so it almost looks as though new leaves are failing. It's difficult to tell. I mean, that's an old one. That'll do. And Masdevallia hybrid, is that one going to come off? Well, it is now. It has nice flowers on. It's quite a substantial plant, it's quite a large plant, but if it keeps losing leaves at that rate, it won't be. And I haven't been keeping Masdevallias long enough that have grown well enough to actually work out how the old leaves work, because under normal circumstances the leaves fail and the plant dies. You know, that's my sort of Masdevallia story through the years. I don't keep them very long, they don't last, because I don't look after them very well. A lot of that was the heat in the old place. Well, we haven't got the heat now, so there's no excuse for temperature, but I mean, this has got a pretty good root system. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this, there's plenty of roots in there. The media is not old, so it's sometimes a bit disconcerting when you're losing quite a lot of leaves. Well, I won't say a lot, but more than I would like. It's not bone dry, but it is quite dry, and that could be part of the problem. Anyway, let's make it wet. Now there's two Masdevallias on this shelf. They are part of my cooler, shadier set under normal circumstances, but the fact is they're growing quite well and they are drying out faster than my other cooler, shadier plants, which is partly why they're on that shelf, because it means they come round for watering a little more frequently. I mean, that was quite dry. Not bone dry, but certainly heading that way. So that's that one. And then we'll do the other one, which is not looking good at all, and I need to know why. This is Inca Prints. This is the one that came from Mixed Masdevallias as a gift, even though I thought I was paying for it, but Mick said he didn't want anything for it. But this has got quite a few failing leaves on it. Some of which are such that I want them off, because they're whoops, bash the place around, why don't you? They're totally spoiling the look of the plant, really. And the number of leaves on this plant is getting less because there are more coming off than there are being replaced. So, whoops, making a mess on my floor now. Ugh. So one thing with this place, having cleaned it all up, I do try and keep it clean now. So it's difficult to know. It is growing new leaves. There are new leaves coming. But as I said, the rate of loss is exceeding the rate of replacement at the moment. I mean, you can see there's good roots going down in the pot, but it just doesn't seem to be doing as well as it once was. And I haven't had it a huge amount of time from Mick. I'll have to check the date. And it was repotted when I got it, so it was in fresh media. So the media should be okay. But I know Mick said that when you get into the winter, the way that I water, pouring the water through, might be a bit too heavy going for the type of media it's in, and I might need to ease up a bit and do more of a trickle than a drown. So that's that one, that's Inca Prints. So Masdevallia with an actual name. And next we have something that might not go back on the shelf, it might go in the bin, because I think, yes, that's gone. Oh, that's such a shame, I really like that plant. No reasonable explanation, it was on a mount and it just went down. Finished flowering and went down. And that was the Dendrobium coriniferum. Virtually impossible to get again. But it's gone, there's no life at the base there. So we won't bother putting that back. No more to say about that. Apart from the fact it's a black hair type, and in my years of having black hair types, quite a few have done that, where they've actually bloomed for a very long time, with very long lasting blooms, and then once the blooms finish, the plant fails. And that's happened on more than one occasion, and now it's happened again. Right, that's that one. Next one, another Dendrobium. This is Dendrobium trigonopus, however you want to say it. And its new growth is pushing on quite nicely, still growing. And I don't see a shed load of roots coming out from the base of that plant. And it is growing, but I don't see loads of new roots coming out from the base of that new growth yet. So when I water this, I water it incredibly carefully, and it doesn't get much at all, it gets a trickle. So it is literally, I'll show you, it's like that, down there, bit down there, bit down there, and a bit down there. That's all it's going to get. It's just that tiny amount. And even some of that's gone through and come out the bottom. But it's probably pure bark, you know, in which case it's not holding a lot of water. It was relatively recently repotted, within 6 months of me getting it anyway. That's that one. They're a bit fussy. They are renowned for being not that easy to keep for some reason. You get these sort of things, oh, they don't do very well in cultivation, but then you don't get a why. you know, surely somebody's found out by now the trick. Now this is another Dendrobium, and this is unusual because this is a Dendrobium in a holy clay pot. And I thought I'd try this on the grounds that it's a Latoria type, and they don't like the cold in the winter, so they virtually stop growing. And it's very easy to rot the roots during that period. And I thought, well, it'll be a lot less likely to rot its roots if it's got that amount of air around it, because it doesn't matter what water I put on there, it's going to be dried very quickly, so hopefully no chance for the roots to rot. Now this has just matured this growth. We've gone up a stage. I like to see progress, so I like to see younger canes pushing on, getting bigger and bigger, up to the point where you think they've finally got to their full size, like this, these two, roughly the same size, but they've both got 3 leaves. And now I've just produced one that's a bit bigger that's got 4 leaves, so that's progress. That's what we like to see. Now, again, not loads of water, but this is in active growth at the moment. That growth is maturing. We have root activity all around the base of the pot. Yeah? So I'm trying to work out which way the camera is. It's like a mirror, it's back to front. And then down at the bottom we've got a new growth starting as well. So this one's in growth, so I'm not quite so worried about being ultra gentle with the watering, because it is actually growing. That's that one. Next one. Couple of leaves to come off on here. Well, one fell off before it got here. That saves me the job, I suppose. But I want that one off. It's yellow, serving no purpose now. So we'll have that one off. What about you? Yeah, we'll take you off as well. You're virtually off anyway. So that leaves what's left. Now this is Oncidium Tahitian Dancer. As these are different videos, this is something new, a shelf at a time. So it's random. What you'll get on a shelf is what comes off that shelf. And occasionally it might be many of the same plant and a couple of odd ones. And on some shelves it could be a right assortment. But this has gone from a rescue to growing very nicely, because it's got 2 lovely strong new growths pushing up that I suspect will both bloom. Any signs? Yes, that one's got a spike. I doubt if I'll be able to show you because it's right down in there. So we have a spike here, and on the other side we don't have one yet, but I suspect we will soon. So this went from a rescue, started putting out aerial roots all over the place, which is why it's got moss on the top of the pot to help keep those roots hydrated long enough to get down in the pot. The pot now has lots of roots. This is not a transparent pot, it's like in between. So it's sort of see-through but clouded. I'll call it clouded. It's a clouded pot. But you can see there's lots of roots in the pot now. So this one's recovered very nicely. This was once in the house round the other place. It was actually on the dining room table. It now lives with all the others basically. So this one's coming on nicely. So I'm just doing my normal bug check. There's a scale there that just brushed off. This did actually get sprayed a while ago. Yeah, so it's coming on quite nicely. Pleased with that. As I said, it's gone from not doing very well at all and almost getting thrown out to sort of sorting itself out quite nicely. And blooms on this are very attractive. It's another, I believe it's got Sotoanum in it. If not, it has similarities. So it has a branching spike with lots and lots of, I won't call them tiny blooms, small, and a lovely colour. So that one to look forward to. Next, another oh no, let's have that one next. Another Oncidium type. It's got dead leaves in the pot here. That saves me cutting them off, I suppose. Got a couple of leaf tips issues here. Yeah, there's enough to worry about. There's 3 They're old leaves. Well, they are quite old leaves as well. They're on real part of the old plant there. But this one's in bloom, or well, it will be very soon. And this is Chirophorum, or Chirophorum, or Chiarophorum. C-H-E-I, I'll do pop-ups, blow it. Start spelling stuff out, I'll do pop-ups. And where I've got blooms, I'll put the blooms on as well. We've got everything in bloom on the 8th in the not too distant future, but nonetheless this isn't going to be open on the 8th, so having a look at the blooms now won't matter. Now this hasn't got a good root system, but basically it's pushed up. This growth in the middle here has got 2 spikes, one each side, and this new growth round here has got a spike pushing up as well, but it looks like just the one. So, you know, it's grown some new growths and they are blooming, so it's sort of doing okay. But it hasn't got the best root system in the world, that's for sure. The plant itself isn't really growing at the moment, so I'm not going to drown it. It's just going to get some water. Now obviously that water went round the outside of the pot. This is a bonus when you've got a plant like that that's in the centre of the pot with one bulb on the edge, because you can pour the water around the edge and the centre of the pot's probably dry. And would there be many roots in the centre of the pot? Well, there would be some, because that new growth came up in the middle of the plant. But I don't want that drowned, I don't want that soaking wet. It seems to drop its roots if it gets too wet. Another Dendrobium. This is, what is it? I'll have to read it out. God, blimey. Oh, I'll put a pop-up. It's in my notes. This is the one that Lynn gave me relatively recently. It's difficult to work out what it's doing. It has a lot of roots that are tired old roots. They're probably still hydrating the plant okay, but they're not active. However, I do see a couple of active ones in amongst them, but not a lot. Now that's in new media because I haven't long potted it up. As a consequence, I can absolutely drown that. And by tomorrow it'll probably be dry again. But I don't want this dripping wet. I know I've just poured water all over it and it is dripping wet, but it isn't really, because it will dry very quickly. So the roots have had a good soak and then they'll dry off relatively quickly until we get some nice new roots going, because that will produce a new root system in the not too distant future. Latoria type, that one. Yeah, I'm going to have to move this rack. Start to squeeze past here and the gap seems to be getting smaller and smaller. What do you mean it's you getting bigger and bigger? Down cheek. Right, what have we got here then? What we've got here is one that got potted up from a mount not too long ago, anticipating a massive load of roots, and we didn't get them. It didn't happen. So what was hoped for with this was that the new growths would mature. As they were doing it, they would produce roots and we would get some blooms. We didn't get any of it. The new roots, the new growths didn't mature to full size. Now that's probably the disturbance coming off a mount, you know. And we didn't get the associated root system that I was hoping for. But what we've got now are a multitude of new growths. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 new growths coming up on that. Hopefully those new growths will produce the blooms. Now that hasn't got a tag on it. It should have. I do know what it is. And again, pop up with blooms. I've been trying to rescue this for three plus years, and I'd class it as rescued, but slower than I thought, because I thought it was rescued with the last set of new growths, and then they decided not to play ball. So hopefully it is again now. I suppose we better give it some water. Now again, It hasn't got an extensive root system now. It's got moss in the media to help keep it moist. And that was put in there for the last set of roots that we were expecting, which we didn't get. So that just got a trickle, not a lot. Because it's got moss in it, it's going to stay moist, and by giving it a trickle, the moisture will soak using the little strands of moss into most of the pot. And by the time it's done that, it'll only be damp, it won't be wet. Yeah? Because until we get the new root activity, the chances are, if it stays wet and soggy for any length of time, the roots that are there will rot. So you need to go careful with that one. Running out of space here, so there's only a couple more. Oh, this is a funny one. This is Encyclia lancifolia, and the chances are it might not be Encyclia anymore, because the Encyclias and the Prosthetias and a couple of other names keep getting played with. They keep swapping them around all the flipping time. Now this is not a happy plant, but it's difficult to work out why. If you look at the last remaining old bulb that's got leaves and look at the size of it, and then look at the size of the latest two growths that I grew. This one with leaves, this one's dropped them. Pathetic. But it now has two more new growths, so it's got two leads that constantly keep producing a new growth that seem to be getting worse and worse rather than better and better. But it's got a root system down in the pot, so it can hydrate itself, and it just doesn't grow as well as it should. And that's all I can say about that. I've tried moving it around. It's gone from quite bright light to less light. I can't really change the temperature that much anymore. I don't tend to have as much control over, what would you call it, little microclimates. They don't tend to get those microclimates in this environment. They don't seem to be there. It seems to be all one. So there's a few scale on that bulb. So that's that one. Strange one, that. I can't remember whether that's flowered or not, but if it has, you'll get a picture. I just can't remember. And now we've got something that's being very, very, very silly. This is a rescue zygo. And by rescue, you can see what I mean. What a tatty looking object. It's embarrassing. And what's it doing? Pushing up a spike. Now I would suggest that may well be what I would call a last resort spike. In other words, if I don't try and produce some seeds, I'm not going to make it. But yeah, it was a piece that was left over from a plant that effectively failed. And I was goaded. I didn't say it was my idea, because you know my attitude towards pieces of plant that have failed miserably, that have got a tiny bit of green on. I don't usually bother. But somebody said you really ought to try and, as an experiment if nothing else, stick that in the cocoa husk and see if you can get it to grow. Well, it's growing. It's just a Zygopetalum hybrid. But yeah, we got a spike. And quite honestly, there's 4 buds on that spike. That's going to totally drain the plant, isn't it? Just get rid of that yellow leaf. It won't take up as much room on the shelf. So get rid of that. Yeah, it looks better already, doesn't it? That's not a happy plant. It's the previous growth that it grew hasn't desiccated. I'll give it that, and it did retain its 2 leaves. The older bulb was bad. So, well, I'm just going to let it go. See what happens. Can't even remember which one it is. And then the last one on this shelf is, what is it? Another tatty looking object. Ah, I remember what this one is. This is, I don't want to lose this, but it's doing its typical, I'm going to have to spray that. That's down in those leaves is quite bad scale. That's obviously got mist. They haven't suddenly appeared since last time I watered this, so I obviously missed them last time round. But they're on these old sheaths, they're down in here. So they're on the oldest part of the plant. So they won't be damaging new growths or anything, but they'll be sitting there increasing in numbers until there's enough of them to totally clobber the plant. So I'm just pulling the sheaths down out of the way so that when I do spray it I get right down to where they are. Right, that's that. So this is a rescue again. It's another Oncidium intergeneric that when you get it out the pot, you buy it in bloom, you get it out the pot and it's got next to no roots. Recognise that pattern? Yeah? Ever come across that before? Yeah. So anyway, it became a rescue straight away, as they do, and it's taken a while, but it is coming back now. Got a lovely strong new growth coming out here, that will bloom. This growth over here is reasonable. This has very, if you look, it has very long, thin bulbs, yeah, and very flat. That's how it is, but that is a desiccated bulb. That's the oldest one on the plant, and also the biggest. But if you look at this old one here, that's not totally desiccated. So it does have a ribbed look to it, but they're very flat, they're very thin. Very, very thin. So anyway, we have a nice strong new growth here. This was the previous growth here that didn't bloom. And that now has a new growth coming out at the base, and then this lead over here pushed up this growth, which that's already bloomed. So that will also, oh, and there's the new growth coming up in there. So we need to get that sheath off so that the roots can escape. Just break it away from the base. Doesn't have to come off completely. And then you can see the new little roots at the base of that new growth. They can now escape and hopefully get down in the pot. Right, so you're going to have a spray. So again, I put moss around these aerial roots so that they can get down in the pot. This pot feels light as a feather, so I think it's drying out a bit. So we'll give it a good go and see how it does. As I said, it's recovered reasonably well. And the reason I want this to be a success is the blooms. They are stunning. Sorry, yellow leaf, tidy time. Take them off. It's amazing how much of an improvement on a plant it makes just taking the yellow leaf off. And next time I water this one and this one will come off as well. In fact, that one can come off now. Not enough green left. Not enough green left on that to make it a functional leaf. That's the oldest leaf on the plant. Was the oldest leaf on the plant, so that's that one gone. Right, so I'll take that outside, give that a spray, and that's the last one on the shelf. This is it's one of those, it's called a Cambria. So that's a generic name for orchid that's not Phalaenopsis. That's the way the trade tend to use the word Cambria. But it does have beautiful blooms. The blooms are very Odontoglossum-like, and given the shape of those bulbs, the chances are there's quite a lot of Odontoglossum in this, amongst other stuff. But I class it as recovered now, and I'd like to keep it recovering by giving it a flipping good spray and hopefully decking those scales before they get out of hand. Right, so that's a shelf. Now that was a relatively large shelf. Where shelves are tiny and they've only got 4 or 5 plants on, I'll combine 2 shelves. So this is a new idea, shelf at a time, and chat about each plant. Now this time I did it as I was watering. That's just how it happened. I won't always be doing that. I won't always be watering them at the same time. I might just be picking them up, looking at them, put them down. Now obviously those will go a lot quicker. But that's the general idea anyway. The plants come off the shelf random. It's whatever's on the shelf, and that's what you get in that video. So I can't sort of give it a title like let's have a look at Dendrobiums, because probably won't be. Some are, But then I would think there's probably Dendrobiums on most shelves, except for the dedicated ones. Like Cattleyas up there is just Cattleyas. That hasn't got any. This has. That has. That hasn't. That's got loads. That hasn't. So they're dotted around, basically. They're in many places, same as the Oncidium and intergenerics. The Cattleyas are the only ones that aren't spread around much because they've got that highest shelf. Almost dedicated. There are a couple of other Cattleyas that aren't on that shelf, but not many. Right, so there we go. So that's your video for today. And on the end, for those who like that sort of thing, and I'm saying that because it's not necessarily something I'm that keen on, and you're not going to like it, but I'm not keen on baby stuff. It does nothing for me, I'm afraid. No, I know it's family now, so it is a bit different, but it doesn't do much for me. But you can have a treat on the end and have a picture of my daughter Hannah with the latest addition to the family, if you like that sort of thing. And see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.